Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Christian Therapist Podcast. Lindsay Castleman here.
Aaron Strong is here.
And again, I know I say this every time, we're both licensed marriage and family therapists. I don't know why I feel the need to say that. Maybe it's to legitimize us, Aaron. I don't know.
Well, we have first-time listeners. If they just jump in stream, they're just like, who are these guys and, where are they coming from? So I
Yeah,
don't know. It's kind of like when you go to church on Sunday and they're like, if it's your first time here and you have an idea that like maybe 90% of everybody there's been there, like heard this 1,000 times,
sure.
but there's always that one person who's just
There
like,
you go.
so we honor the one.
There you go. So if you are the one,
That's
hey,
it.
we we are therapists, so hopefully that legitimizes us in some way. We also love Jesus, and we continually want to move in with you know, how that just moves together in the therapy room. Aaron, we last time started part one on the theology of legalism versus transformation. So last episode, we talked more about legalism, just really what it is, what it can look like in the therapy room,
Hmm.
and a little bit of understanding maybe why people can move in that way,
Right.
but also how it's not really the heart of God. It's not really the way that Jesus came and was with us. He wasn't with us in a legalistic way. He actually came, I know you mentioned this last time, Jesus came to essentially remind us that we are broken humans that could never fulfill the law. We
That's
will
right.
always, always, always fall short. And for me, there's freedom in that, not freedom to go and do whatever I please, but
Mhm.
freedom that I don't have to wear these masks that I have it all together, or these masks that say, look at all these markers that I'm hitting, because I know that that's not what God's looking to. He's looking for and wanting to be with us, and a heart that wants to be with him. And out of being with him, we feel the love from him, we the love back. It's just a continual flow of appreciation, love, witness. And out of that is when we start to say, man, I want to honor, I want to um, just show up in a way that pleases the Lord, because man, how much he loves us. Like I feel
Yeah.
that.
Well, and that's kind of the whole thing, right? Because nobody feels connected and satisfied with legalism,
Right.
right? God doesn't, a spouse doesn't. I don't want
Mhm.
somebody just coming willing to check boxes to satisfy they've completed their obligations so they can go do whatever they want. That doesn't feel super connected.
Right.
So, like, that's just how it works. And it also helps us know, like, if everyone's just broken and the process of transformation occurs,
Mhm.
that anytime somebody acts like they have it all together, it's the clearest indication that they don't.
Correct.
Like they're
Correct.
showing up humble, be like, I just trying to figure it out. I may be good at these things. I'm still trying to work it out. Like that's more authentic than this illusion that people really can master everything in their life. It doesn't. Even in knowledge, right? Even when we know like in expertise, the more you know what you don't know,
Hmm.
as you kind of define the edges of where your knowledge or competency is. And it's the same way with growth and transformation. The more you grow into maturity, the more you kind of grow in Christ likeness, the more you can see where the gaps exist, the more defined those places are, and the more we know, like, I got work to do over here.
Oh, completely. Well, and that's the place too where we're not saying, man, like, let's now not look at behavior. Let's
Right, sure.
not pay attention to behavior. It's just only about the heart. But what we know, and in different modalities that we use, they might look at behavior as like a block, a trailhead. I'm trying to think of other modalities, but it's not coming to me right now. But it's basically, I like the trailhead analogy, because it's like when we start to see this behavior, and it's behavior that shows up sideways. It's this behavior that, um, really is sabotaging relationships. It's behavior that leaves everybody, including yourself, around you empty. And a lot of the behaviors, they can look good on the surface,
Right.
but they're not producing fruit. They're not there. There is an emptiness to it, that we use that, looking at that behavior, to start to walk down into Like, what's the behavior attached to? What's underneath the behavior? Because we still have to look at these things because there is a place inside of us. I think it's, is it Bonnie Badenoch in The Heart of Trauma? She says essentially, like, the behavior are like these places inside of us crying out for rescue.
Hmm.
And so that's what we start to look at is the sideways behavior. It's not something that we want everybody to start to tiptoe around. And I even had that in a session recently is, when we discovered this behavior and what's behind the behavior, just because we see what's behind the behavior and we have empathy for it, it doesn't mean we all now need to tiptoe around to make sure they don't ever feel this way.
Sure, right. Yeah.
That we need to go into this wound and start to transform it,
Yeah.
which is
You can't.
different than legalism, which is we got to control the behavior.
Yes, because that control function is so huge, right? Control yourself, do what's right, willpower, overcome, disconnect from the heart, disconnect from
Right.
the feeling, just offer the right option or the right expression. And then that's what righteousness is. That's what makes you good and right to others. And that's so not the case, right? Because if you ignore the feeling, that feeling's going to show up and it's still going to need something to soothe it, and it's going to elicit some other kind of weird behavior. So they
Yes.
just find some, if you cancel that one, it'll just go over to some other weird thing, right?
Right.
Because its longing is there. So we can't protect people from feeling bad. We have to get into the bad feeling and help transform it. Like that's the whole idea of transformation. We don't leave broken things broken and hope they go away or they just heal by themselves. We have to go be a part of that process and engage it, whether that's within ourselves or in the context of relationships. Either way, uh,
Right.
how it's
Right.
made to work.
Yeah. Well, and in the therapy space, the way that we start to do that, and the way that honestly, I would love for all, even churches and small groups, and just to start to be able to learn that process of walking from the behavior down into what's that feeling that drives the behavior, and
Mhm.
then what is that feeling crying out for?
Yeah.
What
So,
does it need?
this hard thing about transformation is it requires someone.
Hmm.
You can't do it like it requires yourself to be curious and want to be different, that desire to be different, not just avoid being different by doing different. To go look at our hearts, to look what's in there, to help what's in my heart become something new.
Right.
That's a very vulnerable thing to do. Or it requires somebody to be curious about our heart without judgment, without condemnation, to
Yes.
express empathy, but in which calls us to something that's more true to what we're really looking for than all these broken ways that we protect ourselves in and these weird behaviors that we do that can get me what I need sideways without being vulnerable, or I can ignore things, or I can disconnect from things, or whatever we do.
Hmm.
It takes this real vulnerable look because the hardest thing to do is to change your heart.
Yes.
It's so vulnerable, it's so personal. I don't know what's down there. I'm scared to find out what's in my heart.
Hmm.
All of those things are so risky.
Yeah.
It's just easier just to check a box than engage in that place. And if no one's ever done that with you, like if you
Yeah.
didn't grow up where that was normal, if you didn't have friends that could see you and speak into your life, then it's always going to be a very tricky process. But there's a choice we have to make somewhere that wants to move into these places, that has a longing greater than my fear,
Mm-hmm.
that that leads me into this new space. And
Right.
I think that's what God calls us into, is this really awareness, not a lack of awareness, but an increasing awareness of not just what's in our hearts, but what's in other people's hearts. And so we can create a more of a community. I like how Kurt Thompson talks about like confessional communities, these really, vulnerable places where we just feel super safe, that I
Yeah.
to be known, to know someone, where all of that transformation can happen. The more isolated you are, really, just the harder that whole thing is.
Completely. And you hit the nail on the head there in talking about, if you've never had anybody be curious about your inner world, about those woundings, about those feelings inside of you that have been neglected, abandoned, rejected, wounded, then to look in there, to go to those places is so scary. And that is too why I believe He's not called us to go look there alone. Even in these places, He's like, He will go with you, others will go with you. But what you were saying, that non-judgmental stance is very big. And that's a lot of times it's almost like, for me as a clinician, I start to think of myself like I'm on this rescue mission to get to that wayward feeling and to show it something that has not felt before. And
Yep.
along the way, like on this mission, even if you think about it, like in a spaceship or in the jungle or whatever, it's kind of like there are a lot of things that try to come at you to get to those places
Hmm.
because they are things that have protected that feeling from being seen or hurt or rewounded. Been put there in survival to keep people away so that they don't get close. And now I'm not trying, it's the same thing with Jesus, right? I think we talked about this before. He stands at the door and knocks.
Yeah.
He doesn't push his way in. And so, like, keeping that in mind, I'm not going to go further than the client wants, is able to in
Right.
that moment. But there's still this place of going, okay, okay, okay. We're going on this rescue mission to essentially say, and I had several supervisees yesterday or when they were staffing their clients, the question that I had for them is I said, well, I wonder when this behavior was showing up, where did they go? Like, where did they disappear to? And what was that in them that felt like it needed to disappear or hide behind this behavior?
Yeah.
And what would it start to look like to be curious as to where'd you go? We lost you here. Let me go find you, you know?
And that's kind of what I see our job as therapists is, or we are to do, is to see a client's heart,
Mhm.
regardless if they know their own heart. They
Yes.
come all the time, they don't know their own heart. They believe all kinds of weird things, about who they are or how the world works. And my job is to see past those behaviors, past those stories, to see what's in their heart, because that kind of bonds me to them. I can connect to that. I can embody that. I can feel that underlying expression that they long for in their heart, and see the qualities that are more true to who they are than just kind of the things that they're doing. And then that allows me not only to work on the outside behavioral part, but how to awaken what's inside.
Mhm.
Because the more I figured this out, I don't know, years ago, is that if a behavior has a function to soothe some kind of feeling underneath, if I can shift the feeling underneath, the behavior doesn't have a function. Like, I
Mhm.
don't need that. It doesn't do what it used to do because we found a different way to attend to what's underneath. So, kind of this working from the inside out, working from the heart out, this process of transformation, it's easier to slough off all of these behaviors that I used to need to do these things for me. But as I get these underlying needs met in a different way, I don't need those behaviors anymore. They don't have a purpose. They become entanglements, they become burdens instead. And
Mhm.
so they're easier to shift. And so helping a client connect to their heart, what is that feeling? What's that looking for? What's it want? Kind of what's it holding? And how to engage that? What does it need? And how do we respond to that in this caring way? Opens up these new possibilities for something to happen, a new truth to emerge.
Mhm.
Sometimes we need truer truths than what we carry, and sometimes I need a care that I have not experienced. I need some kind of corrective experience, and
Right.
then we want to encourage them to continue on. Right? Scripture calls it faith and good works, but it's not the works. It's continue on this path of becoming, of growing into fullness
Mhm.
of who they are, not just in a faith. We're not just doing discipleship in the therapy room, but there's a fullness of who they were designed to be, and we're trying to help them grow into the fullness of who they are inside but can't get out.
Mhm.
Right? Sin just bottles everything up. It can't really fully bloom, and so we're trying to get rid of all these things that let all these things, these new things emerge.
Right. And what I found to be true, and I don't always remember, sometimes on a good day, I'll remember to tell my clients this, and sometimes I have to catch it later and be like, I'm so sorry, I forgot to warn you. But the more that we start to try to get to the heart, to get to the wayward feeling, to get to the place of distress within them, especially if they've spent a long time disconnected from that place, protecting them from that place, these behaviors will even start to increase
Mm,
the more that we try to get to that feeling, because the behaviors, again, were trying to keep us away from the feeling.
right?
And then as we start to move towards the feeling, like let's say it's even you are saying numb to the feeling by drinking.
Hmm.
When we start to get closer to the feeling, you could feel that increase of that, which is why it's important to help resource our clients, to help make sure they've got other people to turn to, other things to turn to. And, again, knowing that this could kick up some of these ways of survival, these places of protection. Um,
It's
so
so hard and
knowing
confusing.
that.
Yeah, it's so hard and confusing for clients when that happens. I have a client, we're working through some significant trauma that they disconnected from most, like tried to disconnect from most of their life. And so as soon as you crack the box and start looking at what's in there, they're having nightmares that get like these oppressive thoughts or feelings that show up, things that they've turned off for a long time, but you're turning the feeling back on and
Mhm.
it's like when if you fall asleep with your arm and it goes numb, it doesn't come back feeling good. It comes back
Right.
with pins and needles. Like that's like, ugh, this feels bad, this thing that happened.
Mhm.
And it's counterintuitive to think that this process of growth should just be this beautiful, comforting, warm expression. But oftentimes, if the thing that was left damaged and broken and hurting, when we connect to it, it's still damaged, hurting, and broken
Right.
until we begin to attend and help it recover and mend and then can grow in these new arenas. And so I think that's what's hard about any kind of discipline or spiritual discipline, whether that's like, you know, prayer and fasting to dieting and exercise, like it all kind of works the same way, is that there's only so much willpower we can kind of generate inside of ourselves to make our selves do things that we don't like if we can't connect to something more internal about why we're doing it. And if that why is the focus, that heart shift is the focus,
Mhm.
then I'm watching the transformation in me, and that's fueling me going, oh, I'm getting closer. This is what I want. This is where I want to go. And so that will is being regenerated to continue to move in, to continue to progress. Versus if my heart is disconnected, then all I'm trying to do is willpower behavior.
Right.
Eventually, I run out of gas, and I'm like, ugh, this is all hard. This is no good. I don't care. It's not worth it. And we just kind of crumble back into our old ways.
Right. And I feel like maybe in the last episode, you'll have to maybe help me remember, even the practical way we look at that is, sometimes I've heard people say, oh, my therapist said, go on a date night. Like that's going to help the coupleship. And so then, or you've got one spouse that's like, I need you to do this, 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 and this in order for me to feel loved.
Right?
But really and truly, what we know is if the other spouse shows up and just does them all as though it's a checklist and does it, it still
Unsatisfied.
won't satisfy.
Right. Right.
And if the spouse then, like how we were talking about our relationship with God before, though, connects to their own love and care for their spouse, can even connect to the distress and the loneliness that their spouse is feeling in the relationship. And out of that, out of that outpouring, then moves into doing these things, then moves into, um, sending flowers or whatever, planning a date night. There's a difference. It's the feeling, the outpouring from the heart
Yeah.
is what starts to satisfy. It's not
Yeah.
the list that satisfies. Now, there's still behavior that comes from the outpouring,
Yeah.
but it's just what is it connected to? Because if the outpouring is connected to an annoyance that I have to do this list, but I'm still going to do this list because they're so controlling, like then that's the feeling that's going to be conveyed. Or if it's connected to, I am so scared that if I don't get this list right, that I won't be in good standing with them
Hmm.
and they'll be angry at me again, then that's going to be the feeling that outpours.
Right.
Or if it's connected to the feeling of, oh my gosh, I feel lonely in this, and I'm connected to their loneliness, but I also see them over there, and I want to move towards them because I remember my love for them. I'm
Hmm.
connected to that, then that has a feeling that
Yep.
comes with the behavior. So they're all the same behavior, but they've got different feelings that are connected to them
Right.
that makes it satisfying or just makes it completely empty, or not satisfying.
And that's hard even for the one who feels wounded. Their woundedness comes out as prescription, as you mentioned. If you
Yeah.
love me, you do this, you do this. You would say it this way. Why don't you do it this way? How come I don't feel like this when you do this?
Right.
Right? So they try to prescribe the thing that they want, but they're describing a behavior. And so when they get that behavior, they're overly frustrated like
Hmm.
you were saying. And it's so difficult when you can have the same behavior and it can mean two different things. If you're just trying to do a behavior, this is going to be very frustrating for you that you could do the thing and it still won't count,
Right.
right? If you go on the date night because you were told you had to plan a date night and you're like, well, I gave you the date night. That's what you asked for. There you go. Or are you wanting to spend time with me? Is the date night representative of your heart that
Right.
you want to be close and you want to be with me? And that's what you're longing for, is not the event. It's the closeness the event can facilitate. If I think we do this in church all the time, like we're supposed to go to church every week. Like we gotta go to church. If I
Hmm.
don't, people not there, and if I'm serving on a team, then they're like, well, you need to attend if you're serving. You know what I mean? And there's all these things that we just got to do. And God's like, but do you want to spend time with me with the community of believers? Because I want you to want that, not just go check the box because you're supposed to, right? There's all
Right.
these things that can shift our heart. And I like there's a psalm where David says, I've hidden your word in my heart so I won't sin against you.
Mm.
And legalists will hear that as the purpose of memory scripture. Well, if you memorize his word, you'll know you're not supposed to do it, and so you don't do it.
Hmm.
But if I hide you in my heart, then I always want to show up well in the relationship because
Right.
you're in my heart,
Right.
right? Which is a very different posture.
Yes.
Uh, and so it's and you can do the same behavior,
Mm.
but we believe feelings more than we believe words and actions.
Yes.
You
Yes.
can feel when it's absent and
Mm.
it won't count. It
Oh,
doesn't
for
count.
sure. And to your point, that's exactly what, God is saying to us, is like, I can feel you, the feeling, the desire, the longing to want to be with me. Um, and the knowledge of me, the knowing about me, but not being with me, it's not what's going to satisfy here.
Mm-mm.
And it's not what connects
That's
in
right.
any way, shape, or form. Well,
And
Aaron, I
it's
know, oh,
satisfying. I love that. No, no, no. I'm just agreeing. I'm going back to satisfying, right? This true transformation satisfies. True transformation
yeah.
hits a mark that we inevitably and inescapably long for in our experience. And that's how we know that that's present is when that thing in us is truly satisfied. It wants to do more. It doesn't want to do less or how to get away with more. It wants to be generous. It wants to expand. It's good. How much more goodness would you want? That freedom in Galatians and Romans, like there's no law. Like give as much as you want, serve as much as you want, because that gives me more. That satisfaction comes from that transformation. So I just wanted to, I know we're wrapping up, but I wanted to throw that out there.
I
Like
love that.
it feeds itself in that space.
It does. Well, and what I was kind of moving into there, Aaron, you can help me with this is, last time I promised, hey, we're gonna lay this out a little bit more in steps. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
so if I kind of consolidate here what we're talking about, it's almost like step one, and it even goes back to think like what Jesus asked the woman at the well. He was like, "Do you want to be well?" Do you want transformation? Do you realize there's an absence of that based on behavior, based on maybe we're in our head all the time. Maybe we look more for checklists or prescriptions or focus more on the behavior than the heart. Like, are we now realizing that we're broken, all have fallen short, including ourselves? And we are in need of transformation. We are in need of having others and God like search me and know me,
Yeah.
right? So it's almost like step one is this place of humility to
Hmm.
say, yeah, but I don't have it all together, you know.
Right.
And then it's like step two, we really start to have to become aware. And if you're in relationship with anybody, they will happily help you be aware of the behavior that feels disconnected.
Hmm.
It feels wayward. And it could be, you could be an incredibly hard worker but there's no connection at home. You
Yeah.
could say that you have the strongest relationship with Jesus ever, but you are estranged from your kids, right? Like there are these places where the behavior, the way you're showing up, doesn't match with the heart of God,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And so then we have to look at the behavior, right? And then when we start to be curious about the behavior, we start to wonder what are the feelings? What are the messages that are attached to the behavior?
Hmm.
And even where did they come from? And what were the experiences that they had where maybe they did not get what they needed? Again, maybe they were rejected, they were abandoned, um, they were wounded, they were hurt. The one that was supposed to be there wasn't there, or the one that was supposed to be there actually was the one that did the wounding.
Right.
Um, like there's a lot of places in there that we can start to be curious about.
Yeah. And helpless, hopeless is one of those big ones at the bottom.
Yes.
Kind of like erodes any sort of transformations even possible. I'm not worth it. I
Hmm.
can't.
Hmm.
But it's believing in those moments. We have to choose to embrace uh, that we are designed for this. From a faith perspective, we have to believe that God is a redeemer and a restorer. He can bring dead things back to life. Like there's nothing impossible for him. And if our heart is believes and is willing to do the work. And
Right.
so, as you were saying, that looking into our heart to see what's there, because sometimes even be curious about our own behavior, like, why am I doing that? I don't know why I do that, but
Sure.
I do it for something. And what's it doing for me? And that curiosity to look inside
Mhm.
helps us begin to make those connections. And I might say that that next step is, and I have a client I'm thinking about right now where they're right at the precipice of this change. And it's like kind of the moment of surrender. It's the moment where they're willing to let go of the old things to take a leap of faith, to
Mhm.
embrace a new thing. And you can even hear God's call or hear that invitation, and it's just this point of decision.
Right.
And that's the scariest moment in that process of like taking the leap. But once you take the leap, then something is different now because it can be different because it is different.
Right.
We've made that shift. And then it's continuing on. And so that next step then is once you make that leap, once you kind of like make a commitment to the heart change, then it's continuing feeding that process of transformation. It's
Right.
leaning into what I want it to be. It's reminding ourselves. I've had clients like leave sticky notes on their mirrors around their house to remind them why they're doing what they're doing,
Yeah.
not what to do, but this is why this matters. This is why it's significant.
Right.
I know that you and I, we both tell clients at times like you have to keep your pain close to you. The more you can hate the old way, the more that pain of the destruction and the brokenness of it, you hold it close to you. It's a reason to not want to go back to it.
Mhm.
not to self-punish or not to fall in shame, but to represent why I don't want to live there. I don't
Right.
want to do that anymore. I don't want to do that. And
Yes.
that helps propel me continuing on into this new path. And
Yes.
having those people around you, having support systems, is critical. So there's someone who knows you're on that journey, someone who
Right.
can urge you on that journey, someone who reminds you when you're weak that can help prop you up and hold you accountable and call you out when you've slipping back, and not to judge you or shame you, but to help you towards what your own heart is longing for. I think those
Right.
are also really important next steps in that process.
Completely. And even moving into hopeless or helpless when we have already deemed a place hopeless. Like we've already deemed nobody is coming. Nothing will be different. This place just needs to stay shut off forever.
I
Like,
literally saw that on the back of a car yesterday. I was driving,
oh, no
and
way.
the back of this car was these giant bold letters that says, "Nobody is coming to save you." It like they posted it on their back windshield.
Oh gosh.
It was crazy. I
Oh
was like, "Yeah,
gosh.
you just declare yourself right there."
I
Like,
know. What resignation.
wow.
Like,
It just struck me. I was like, "Wow."
yeah. Yes. And I get to a degree what they're saying, in that, but you're just going like, man, like we have leaned into hopeless, and I was thinking about a client even that I saw this week, and I'm not gonna give any identifying factors, but it's just sitting in a place of hopeless and actually identifying it brings on the feeling of hopeless. And because now not only are we talking about a feeling, we're in a feeling
Yep.
together.
Hmm.
But even to start to infuse a little bit of hope that maybe with these people, let's just say an example, maybe with like with a parent, connection there is not possible, and I've already resigned myself that it will never be possible.
Hmm.
To then what we can do is we can carry that into all other relationships.
Yep.
So connection with all other relationships are not possible. So then now when we're starting to offer connection here was not possible, but man, it's looking as though there's a longing for connection here. And look, you've got someone sitting next to you that's longing for that with you. It's like I don't know how to trust this. This is throwing my whole system out of whack. This is like I've been able to wire myself in this way. And
Yep.
now we're having to, it's like the whole system has to readjust.
We're shaking the foundations of reality itself.
Right,
We've believed this fundamental truth of life for however long,
right.
and that's how we've oriented everything we did is based on this thing that we believe. And then when that gets disrupted, then it's not like you just shift to what's good. You just go to not knowing. Well, then I don't know what to believe. And what does that mean about the way I've lived all the way up to this point? And if it was never true, and
Hmm.
there's a possibility even that when I recognize that someone actually can be there for you, it can make all the injuries of all the places they weren't there for you feel even worse.
That yes,
If no one could, well then fine. Like I don't have to feel bad about it, it's just how it is. But if they could have and they didn't, then suddenly things are more alive. But that's what we're moving into is more alive, not more dead.
yes,
So that includes feeling, which is pain and joy. And so while they're navigating all of that brokenness and hurt, that shaking of foundation, that confusion or lostness or awkwardness, leveraging that secure presence that you are desired, you are wanted, are cared for. And sometimes as therapists, we're the one who demonstrates that difference.
right.
We're the one that they got to show that, I mean, you may pay for therapy, but regardless of that, I care about you. You matter.
Hmm.
I want to do this work with you, not just because if it's a job.
Right, right. Yep. And that place of feeling someone with you in there. And I'll tell you, a lot of times for me, it is so cool to watch either the client or, from my prompting, if it feels attuned, to invite God or Jesus or the Holy Spirit in to sit with those feelings, to sit with those younger parts, just to sit with those distressed places that felt no one there. Man, and we're not even prompting what would God, Jesus, or the Holy Spirit say. Like we're not saying, "Oh, look, do you hear them say this?" It's more, "Ooh, what do you know? Like, what do you notice the Spirit's doing right now with you? In this scene, in this memory, or even how is Jesus being with you right
Mhm.
now in this scene, in this memory?" And they're telling us. And it's just so beautiful because there's always such a comfort. It goes back to you find like shelter, what is it, in the shadow of my wing? Like it's just kind of that place of like a little kid with their parents' arm around them,
Right.
just finding the comfort there. Uh, that place just is always so beautiful just to like almost be that outside witness looking in as it's unfolding in these places. And so, it's almost like as we start to get closer to the distress feeling, you're going to get more kickback, and that's fine because you just keep showing that you're a safe presence. You're not going to drop it. You can hold it. You got it. But then when you're finally in, being able to give that feeling a different experience that it's never had before, and to invite in safe others, like God uses the Holy Spirit to do that with them. It is fun and honoring and sacred to
Yep.
start to see how that transformation starts to take place because that's a transformation. These places that felt like no one was coming
Right.
started to experience what that loving presence is like. They started to experience witness, not with those that hurt them. But even if we can facilitate that, that's great too. But even like you were saying with us, with the Trinity, with, a safe other that could be in the room with them, that's where we start to see transformation. And that's the sadness that we can experience is that we know that those that are just moving in to only looking at modifying behavior are
Yep.
missing that experience and
Mhm.
that transformation. And you don't want, when you start to actually experience that with yourself and with others, you don't want people to miss it.
Right. That's right. And I think it's important to note, especially when you get that kickback, that that kickback isn't always just the difficulty of making that transition in the person who's pushing back. It's also an instinctive assessment for safety.
Yes.
It's a commitment of the heart. If can you hold my distress if it's this big? What if it's this big? And it's not intentional, but it's this natural needing to know if your heart is really committed or all you're doing is doing a behavior. Because
Mhm.
if you're demanding a behavior and I push back on you and then you can't take it and fall apart, then I shouldn't have trusted you in the first place.
Mhm.
But if I push back and I'm not okay and I'm like scared and I'm overwhelmed and you can see my heart in that and your heart connects to my heart in the fear and the way it's showing up, then over time that will be soothing and that will reduce in intensity. So there's like even there, I think there's a process of kind of assessment in people that want to know, are you really committed or are you just checking your own box in what you're expecting from me to change right now? Are you
Yeah.
really with
Yes, yes. Well, hopefully this conversation was able to shed some light on the difference between legalism and transformation and, maybe put some points above the transformation, like, well, let's head in that direction.
Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
let's
Yeah,
do that. That thing, it's harder,
harder.
but it's better. And I think you said this last time, the other one's also hard. Legalism's also
Right.
hard.
That's right.
It's
You
just, yeah,
pick it.
right. Choose which hard you want to do.
Right.
But if
One is
it's
better
hard,
over in the long run. One is
yeah,
easier in the short run, but
yes.
all you have to
Yeah.
do is not die and one will play out. So
Right, right. You got it. You got it. Okay, well, Aaron, thank you for the conversation. And I know next time we're going to start another theology of. So y'all get excited. We're going to have another one. But this wraps up our theology of the difference between legalism
and
and
trans.
transformation. Yeah. Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks, Lindsay.